and an expert in entrepreneurship and consumer behavior, Dr. Savita Nair, who is also the Dean of Giagi School of Management Studies. She will be talking on the topic Pioneering Social Transformation Through Entrepreneurship. And I've known Dr. Savita for around 15 years, and she is a person who has such a lot of expertise that she gets very good feedback from the students and faculty for whom she has delivered sessions on entrepreneurship and in various subjects in marketing. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Savita Nair today. She is, as I told you, the Dean of Giagi School of Management Studies. She has completed her MBA, MPhil, and PhD. Dr. Savita Nair, an entrepreneurship educator, is certified by NEN, that is National Entrepreneurship Network, and she comes with over 2 decades of experience in academia and industry. She is also a member of Vadhwani Foundation's Global Jury of Startup Mentors, mentoring potential entrepreneurs, students, and early-stage startups. And Dr. Savita regularly handles courses and sessions on entrepreneurship and innovation in awareness camps, faculty development programs at various institutes. And during her previous academic tenure, she was the founder faculty of Campus Company, promoted by students. Her current passion is social entrepreneurship, on which she has several discourses for many international universities. Welcome, Dr. Savita. It is a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to hearing from you and learn more about how we can transform society through entrepreneurship. Over to you, Savita.
Thank you, Vandana. Thank you for inviting me to this Monday Musings. I thank the Management Committee of CMA for having me with the participants today. So good evening, everyone. I could see there that there are around 80 people here, and I believe that I'll be able to add some value to all of yours knowledge regarding social transformation through entrepreneurship. So I'll keep it very simple. I'll be telling you some stories and cases, and from those stories and cases, we will try to learn some lessons on the theme on which I'll be discussing with you today, right? So let me share the screen. Hope you can see my screen
yes,
clearly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir. We can see.
So the entire 1 hour which is given to me, I thought initially I will start with some cases or stories. And from those cases and stories, we will try to learn some lessons. We will have some discussions. And through those discussions, we will try to understand what social entrepreneurship is all about and why we require more of these people in our society today, how United Nations Sustainable Development Goals play a very important role in this context, the theme on which we are talking today. What are some of the models of social entrepreneurship which young graduates can look at when it comes to entrepreneurship with a social cause? And finally, we'll have little more discussions and some more lessons to be learned. So this is how I thought I will have the discussions for today's session. So in between, I'll be asking you some questions. I would request the participants to unmute themselves and answer, because I've put it in such a way that, I keep you engaged and, it's not a monologue. So let us start with the cases. I have some 4 cases or stories to share with you. And this is the first case, and this is a case of a banker to the poor. If any one of you could, some of you will be knowing him. So if any one of you can just unmute and tell me who this person is, then we will go to his story. Anybody?
That person from Bangladesh, Mohammed.
Yes.
He started that bank, Mohammed Yunus. Yes.
Mr. Puneet Krishnan has answered on the chat. Thank you. You're right. So, yeah. So this is Professor Muhammad Yunus, who is the founder and director of Grameen Bank, and he is also the recipient of Nobel Prize in the year 2006. In fact, he and his Grameen Bank together, they were the recipients of the Nobel Peace Prize in the year 2006. Let us try to understand and learn lessons from this banker. So what is the background? If you look at Professor Muhammad Yunus, he was a professor in economics. He was working with the Chittagong University in Bangladesh. And during 1970s, when the big famine, struck Bangladesh, he wanted to know how the poor people were suffering. So he went to some of the villages, along with his students, he went to some of the villages in Bangladesh to find out what is that people are going through. What are the realities that are associated with poverty? Because, as a professor of economics, he can understand patterns and he can come up with some models to help these people. And when he went to this particular village of Jobra in Bangladesh, he happened to meet the weaving community and he found that they were going through a vicious cycle of poverty. So these were the bamboo weaving community, people who had no money to buy the raw materials. So they would get money from money lenders because for these people, it was very difficult to get money from a bank. The moment you go to a bank, a mainstream banker will always ask for some security. And these are poor people who cannot afford to have any security to be given or deposit to be given. So usually they rely on money lenders, and money lenders in turn will charge a huge rate of interest. Getting this money and making, furnitures and things out of it and selling in the market gives them a very little profit, which actually goes again back as payment of interest to these money lenders. It was putting them into the vicious cycle of poverty, and there was no coming out of it. So this was something that moved Professor Yunus, and he felt, let me do something about it. He found that the problem is that these people are not able to access the mainstream banks. And it is not that these people wanted a huge amount of loan. They wanted a small amount of loan in order to do their day-to-day businesses and earn their livelihood. So what he did was he donated $27 out of his pocket to 42 people. So you can look at the amount that each one of them required. It is not huge amount of loan that these people wanted, but small amounts of money. So he lent this money out of his own pocket to about 42 people and tried to figure out how these people are using that money and are they able to generate a profit, and are they returning the money back, because it's a borrowing that they are getting from him. And to his surprise, he found that all of them were able to use that money productively and make bamboo furnitures, sell that, and whatever money they got, they were able to have a profit for themselves and also return the money on time. So he was convinced that if there is some intervention like this done, such people who live in poverty can be taken out of poverty. So he started with this great mission, and he can be called as, Professor Yunus can be called as the inventor or the person who came up with the beautiful microfinance model, which is being taught in business schools today, right? So he was the one who came up with that concept. He piloted this model because at that time, none of the commercial banks were ready to accept such poor people as borrowers. So he had an agreement with Janata Bank, one of those nationalized banks in Bangladesh. He said that I will stand as a guarantor, and made the bank lend money to these poor people. And all of these people who got loan from Janata Bank, they stood as guarantors for each other. And so that there is a peer pressure. And finally, what happened was they were able to utilize that money effectively, make some good business out of it, were able to give back the money on time. There was no default at all. So the pilot was successful, and that led to the creation of the first Grameen Bank in 1983, which is completely based on the microfinance business model, which means it is a bank to the poor. So poor people who cannot afford to have a security to be given in a mainstream bank can come to Grameen Bank. They stand as guarantors. They join as a group and ask for borrowings. They stand as guarantors for each other. And through that, they were able to do business, earn a livelihood, and slowly come out of poverty. What followed was this model became very successful in Bangladesh, not just in Bangladesh, but all over the world. And as I told you before, Professor Yunus received Nobel Prize for this beautiful concept that helped people come out of poverty. Uh, till date, Grameen Bank has given credit to more than 7 million people of world's poor. So you can imagine the scale at which the simple idea has grown. And the model has been replicated in over 100 countries, including in the United States. But when it comes to a developed country, when this model is brought in there, it is tweaked to the context of the country. Professor Yunus didn't stop there. He also came up with many other companies. Like, for example, he started Grameen Phone to cater to the telecommunication requirements of the rural Bangladesh. Grameen Shakti for the energy requirements of Bangladesh, Grameen Fund for similar social ventures to support them to, establish and solve the social problems of his region, Grameen Textiles, Grameen Education, and many more. I've just listed a few of that. So this is the first story for you, a simple idea that Professor Yunus came up with when he saw a problem of poverty in front of him, lending in small amounts at a very, very low interest rates to people in order to help them come out of the clutches of the money lenders and thereby empower themselves. That's the first story. Now let us move on to case 2. This story or case, I call it as, or I have titled it as the power of one for one. Can any one of you tell me who this person is and what is he doing here? Can I have some answers on chat, or you can unmute and say? Anybody?
I think it's a little difficult one.
No
Nobody's
problem.
responded.
No problem. So this is Blake Mikoski, who is the founder of Tom's Shoe, a very, very interesting story. Let me take you through his story. So Blake Mikoski is a serial entrepreneur. While he was a student in college, he wanted to do something on his own. So he started a dry cleaning laundry service to his college students. It became so successful that he started offering the same service to 3 more other universities. And when he was graduating, he sold it off to one of his co-founders. Later, he started a billboard company for advertising. Then he participated in a reality show later on. He also started an advertising company. So one after the other, he was making companies and, making it good and then selling it off. So he was a very successful serial entrepreneur. In 2006, he was on a visit to Argentina on vacation, and where he was able to meet an American woman who was traveling through the suburbs and villages of Argentina in order to donate shoes to children who were shoeless. So when he heard the story, Blake Mikoski thought that I should also understand how these people live. So he said, I will join you. And he went along with this woman for weeks together in various villages and, slums and suburbs of Argentina. And what he saw was the intense pockets of poverty, and that really moved him. And what also he saw was that children were especially affected by the real effect of being shoeless. There were blisters and, there were infections on their feet. He had no clue about shoe business, but he said to himself that I will do something about it. So as his vacation came to an end, he came back to United States, and the same year he started a company called Shoes for a Better Tomorrow, which later got acronymed as Tom's Shoes. So what he did very interestingly, this is a for-profit business, okay? What he did very interestingly here was he came up with a concept known as one-for-one business model. And he popularized this concept so that, people also, the customers who come to Tom's were also happily participating in the donation. So what is this one-for-one business model? He said that for every one pair of shoes somebody buys from Tom's, one pair of shoes gets donated to a child in need. That was a concept called one for one. Today, there are many people who are doing this, but when he started, this was something very innovative and very new. People never thought about it. So people, when he popularized this concept, people were happily buying from Tom's because they knew that once they purchase a pair of shoes from Tom's, they were indirectly contributing to a child's requirement. What followed? He donated more than 60 million pairs of shoes to the people in need through Tom's, and global sales started taking place with having presence in over 1,000 stores. And he didn't stop there. There were other models that he came up with. In 2011, he introduced the same concept of one for one for eyeglasses. So if somebody buys a fashion eyeglass from Tom's, somebody who require an eye treatment, somebody who require a prescription eyewear gets benefited. It's one for one. Okay, that's the next model that he came up with. Later on in 2014, he started Tom's Roasting Company, which actually procured coffee beans from the less developed parts of Africa. And the deal was for every sack of coffee bean somebody gives to Tom's, a week's quota of water will be made available to them. So that was a beautiful concept. So like this, so many such initiatives. And later on in 2015, Tom's later on in 2015, what happened was he sold Tom's to Bain Capital, but he still maintains the role of chief shoe giver of Tom's. So that's a case of Blake Mikoski and the power of one for one. A simple idea, you're seeing a problem in front of you, and you're coming up with a beautiful business model to solve that problem. Let me move on to case 3. This is from India, and it is about a person who's trying to empower poor women, not just poor women, but poor people, but especially poor women, as solar engineers and skilled craftsmen. Anybody can recognize him? Might be you've heard him. His TED Talk is very famous. Might be you've heard that.
You may also write in chat.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
I'm asking participants. Okay. One of the participants have Bunker Roy, yeah. Akshay and Jacqueline. Bunker.
Very good, Akshay and Jacqueline. You have found it right. So it's Bunker Roy, who's the founder of the Barefoot College. A very interesting, a very touching story, and the impact that he has created is enormous. So let us try to understand his story. So Bunker Roy is from a very, very rich background. He went to the best school of India, best college education he had. And his parents wanted him to go abroad and, settle in a very good job. But exactly at that time, when he was graduating, there was this famine that had affected Bihar. So he wanted to know how it looked like when there is no water in a region. How are people living in that? So he went to Bihar, and there he wanted to find out how can you bring water, ensure that water is made available to people, even in case of such difficult dry weathers, there is a continuous supply of water. So in 1972, he started the Social Work Research Center. But while he was living there, especially in Rajasthan, not in Bihar, sorry, in Rajasthan, he had the opportunity to live and work with the rural people of, of this Rajasthan. And he found that they had so much of skills, so much of knowledge, which is very important, which is never brought to the mainstream. So his focus shifted from water to empowerment and sustainability. So what he did was he thought that I should start a school here wherein such skills are taught to the people who require that, and he creates more skilled people and empower them. And so night schools were started because most of the people living there had their daily chores and work to be done in the morning. So night schools were started. And he started coming up with a lot of skilling programs for empowering the poor, especially the women. So the region where in which he was working in Rajasthan was completely a place with no electricity. So solar electrification was one solution he found. And for that, he trained a lot of women from the region in order to become solar engineers so that they can solar electrify their villages. These women became very so skilled that they also went to different parts of the world where there is electricity issues and trained women there to become solar engineers. So that's how it happened. Today, there are a lot of barefoot colleges all over India. And this model is replicated in nearly 25 of the least developed countries across the world. In India, many of us don't know him, but he has, created an impact globally. And in 2012, Barefoot College was the first NGO to partner with UNESCO's Global Partnership for Education of Girls and Women. So that's the story of Bunker Roy for you. And finally, the fourth case from our own region, Coimbatore, not Coimbatore, I would say Tamil Nadu. And the story is about transforming lives by restoring sight. Can anybody recognize who this gentleman is? Anybody? I'm sure some of you would have visited his hospital. So he is Dr. Govindappa Venkatasamy, popularly known as Dr. V, who is the founder of, I think somebody has, very good. Who's the founder of Arvind Eye Care System. Okay, very interesting story, is a case study in Harvard. So what is the background? Dr. V always wanted to serve the humanity, so he took medicine and as his studies, and soon after his graduation, he joined Indian Army as a medical officer. But as he was serving there, he developed acute arthritis, which actually made him bedridden for at least a year. But after he got little cured, but still he had issues, he came back to service and he performed over 100 surgeries a day and over 100,000 successful surgeries during his lifetime. After he got retired, he started Arvind Eye Hospital on a rented premises as a very small facility in 1976 near Madurai. And this model became so good and so popular, people started flocking from all parts of the country. And so he expanded it all over the state. He developed a very successful model of providing high quality, high volume, and low cost services delivery models. If you look at the number of surgeries that take place in Arvind, it is like very fast. Per day, there are so many surgeries that take place. So high volume, and per surgery cost is quite less, and the quality is also guaranteed. He came up with a very interesting business model. So in Arvind, you would have noticed that you have a free hospital and a paying hospital. Those who can't afford to have a treatment, for payment, they can go to the free part of the hospital, and those who can afford to pay will be charged at the paying hospital. So it is a hybrid model that he came up with, which is really successful. And over years, about 55 million patients and 6.8 million surgeries, and still counting. That's a success story of Dr. V. And there are many more like them. It is not that these are the top 4. There are many more like them. In our surroundings, we find them. A few more cases I thought I will quickly talk about. I'm sure you know him. Who is he? The Batman, very good. And we saw a movie also, right? where Akshay Kumar acted in his role. So this is Arunachalam Muruganandam, is also another person who has come up with a very innovative idea of solving the menstrual hygiene related problem of women who cannot afford to buy the sanitary pads that are sold in the mainstream market, where he found his wife suffering with this problem. He took it as a problem and came up with a solution of inventing machines that can make affordable sanitary napkins. So that's the story. In our own Coimbatore, we have Arunachalam Muruganandam. Anybody can recognize her? So I thought I should have also a woman being featured in this. Anybody? So she's Megha Gupta. She's the founder of dharavimarket.com. It is an e-commerce platform just like your Amazon. But the peculiarity or the speciality is that the products that are made by the artisans from the biggest slum of the world, Dharavi, are featured in her website. So she was a journalist, Megha Gupta. She did her urban studies in a foreign university, came back and was studying about the logistic and town planning issues in Mumbai, where she happened to work in Dharavi, and for months and years together, she was observing the issues associated with the logistics and transportation and livelihood of people in Dharavi. And during that research time, she realized that there is so much of talent that is present among the artisans among the people who live in Dharavi. There are a lot of artisans who can make beautiful leather products, like accessories, jackets, clothing, bags, so many different products they can make, which are never brought to the mainstream. So she came up with this beautiful idea of connecting technology, using the power of technology to bring these beautiful skills that people have to the mainstream market. So that's how dharavimarket.com was born. It's an e-commerce platform which features only the products of the artisans of Dharavi. They get a fair price. This is a for-profit business model. So she also shares a small amount from the whatever sales that is being made, but she ensures that a fair price goes to the artisans whose products are featured. So hundreds of artisans are associated with her, and thousands of products are featured in her website. If you get time, do visit dharavimarket.com. It's a beautiful website with a great cause. Okay. And finally, one more guy. I can keep on telling so many stories, but I thought, okay, I'll stop with this final one. Anybody? So he's Mr. Irfan Alam, who is the chairperson of Samman Foundation. He had a very elite education from elite business school, but later on, when on his trip way back to his home in a rickshaw, he happened to listen to the stories of the rickshaw pullers in his region. And what he found was that, they have a very, very difficult livelihood. So most of these people cannot afford to have their own rickshaws. So they rent rickshaws for 30 rupees or 40 rupees per day. And whatever money that they earn out of this rickshaw pulling for the whole day goes for the rent, and very small amount is with them, with which they are not able to have a decent livelihood. So having understood their problem, he wanted to do a tricycle revolution. So what he did was he started having arrangements with the bankers through which rickshaws are made available to these people, so people could own these rickshaws. And he also had arrangements for marketing several products in rickshaw, right from newspapers to juice bottles to several other products, so that, apart from taking people on a ride, products are also sold and people get returns out of that. Apart from helping these rickshaw pullers, their families are also taken care of. So if you get time, go to Samman's website, you will understand that, there's so much of work that has happened. Once Barack Obama, who wanted to meet Irfan Alam for his work, when he met Irfan, said that you are doing a tougher job than what I'm doing. That's a great compliment that is always quoted whenever you read about Irfan's story. So far I told you about so many stories, right? So let us have a quick discussion. What commonalities do you find in them? We started with the story of Professor Muhammad Yunus, who started Grameen Bank, then Blake Mikoski, who started giving shoes to the children who couldn't afford to have shoes. Then we came to the story of Bankar Roy, who was helping empowering people by skilling them, especially women, by skilling them to electrify their villages and, be self-sustained in their own communities. Then we came to Dr. V, who started a hospital for giving free treatment to poor people. Then we came across Dr. Arunachalam Muruganandam, Megha Gupta, Irfan Alam, so many of them, right? They are from different backgrounds. You find that one is in healthcare space, somebody is in footwear, somebody is in banking. Each one is in different space. But if you closely observe their stories, we can find some commonalities. So what do you think are the commonalities that you can find in all of them? Can I have some answers?
You may type or your answers on the chat box. Or raise hands.
So yeah, altruistic, very good. They identify the problem. Wonderful. Any other observations? Empathy. Wonderful. You find so many common things, right? Though they are from different spaces, right? Each one is operating in a different sector, but you find that there could be so many connecting factors, so many characteristics that are common that you can find in these people, right? So all of them are entrepreneurs. They've started something at a very small level, and today they have scaled these up to larger levels. But are they just entrepreneurs, or are they something beyond that? Can we call them as just entrepreneurs, or are they beyond that? Is there something additional to their entrepreneurship? Okay, let me put it this way. How are they different from the regular commercial entrepreneur? You find a lot of entrepreneurs around you, right? You find a lot of them. For example, you go to the street, you'll find somebody running a hotel, somebody running some other shop. There are so many people around us who are running businesses. We call them as commercial entrepreneurs. But the stories that you listened to just now are people who are little different from these commercial entrepreneurs. So how do you think these people are different? Come on.
They are not
Anybody?
looking at their, if I may answer, they're not looking
Yeah,
at
sure.
profit.
They
Profit
may
is,
not be looking at
yeah,
profit.
only.
Okay.
I think Mr. Puneet has also answered. Profit is not the main
Thank you,
thing.
Mr. Puneet. Yeah, that's a very important observation. Profit is not the primary motive, or they won't depend or focus on profit. Farah just says that, Jacqueline, there was not on money, but helping the society. Wonderful. And I think I was able to really bring out those points through these stories. Okay, so let us try to figure this out. And in what ways do they contribute to societal development? So taking these lessons from the stories that I was just explaining to you, and also referring to a lot of literature relating to social entrepreneurs. These are some of the common features that I can showcase to you as the characteristics or qualities of people who operate in this space. So all of these whose stories you listen to are self-driven individuals. Nobody pushed them to do something. They were self-driven. They were entrepreneurs because they initiated something of their own, and they ensured that whatever they've started is sustaining over a period of time. All of them had a social mission. So if you start a commercial enterprise, you are looking at profit making as your major objective. Whereas here, the primary objective is over and above that. What is the primary objective is solving a social problem or taking up a social mission. They had innovative solutions to social problems. If you look at the story of Professor Yunus, it was the concept of microfinance as an innovative solution to social problem. Or if you look at the story of Blake Mikoski of Tom's Shoes, the solution was one-for-one business model. So you come up with innovative solutions, right? They start with as an individual, and over a period of time, they gather people around them. They are risk takers because, these are big problems, daunting problems, and the market forces have failed, government has failed. People, it's a grave problem, but they are taking that risk because they are convinced that their ideas can help to solve that problem to a larger extent. The next point is very, very essential. They pursue social value creation over and above the economic value creation, which is the essence of social entrepreneurship. It doesn't mean that you don't pursue profit. You do pursue profit, but the social value is at a higher level. You are looking at social value creation over and above economic value creation. You ensure that whatever model you start with is sustainable, and over a period of time, it is, staying on its own, and there is a social impact that is created. So that takes us to the definition of social entrepreneurs. Here, what I've done is I've taken 3 different definitions 10 years apart. So 2003, 2013, and 2023. But what you find is the definition has remained the same, more or less. So social entrepreneur is somebody who has a social objective, who has innovative solution to society's most pressing social problems. And they consider social responsibility to be the center to their business strategy. So over years, 30 years of definition that I've taken, the concept of social entrepreneurship remains the same, that there is a social objective or social responsibility, and you're coming up with solutions to solve that. That's what social entrepreneurship is all about. Quickly, we will have a look at the difference between social entrepreneurs and commercial entrepreneurs on some important parameters. So if you look at the objectives, entrepreneurs would want to build sustainable businesses, but social entrepreneurs would want to build not just sustainable, but socially impactful businesses. What is the motive of an entrepreneur? Definitely, he looks at the ROI, right? So return on investment is the motive, or the ultimate figure that he looks at, or he or she looks at, is ROI, or the financial motive. Whereas for social entrepreneurs, it is return to the society. It is mission driven more than financially driven. Focus is on social groups rather than on individual consumers for social entrepreneurs. You are linked with social issues directly. Now, entrepreneurs are also linked to social issues, but it is an indirect way. For example, as an entrepreneur, I start a venture, I employ 100 people. I'm indirectly contributing to societal development, right? But that's an indirect way of contributing. Whereas for social entrepreneurs, you're employing disabled people and thereby, supporting their livelihood. That is a direct way of doing it. I'm just giving one example. So linking of towards social issues more direct for social entrepreneurs. Competition is less, whereas collaboration is more for social entrepreneurs. And how do you measure the success of a social business? Based upon the social impact. Whereas for a commercial entrepreneur, it is based upon how much profit you are making year on year. So this is a quick way of understanding the difference between an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur. So social entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs, but the only difference, or the major difference, is that they pursue social value creation over and above economic value creation. They are driven by a social cause rather than profit motive. That's a huge, or the major difference between the two. Why do we require social entrepreneurs? What is the need? So here I'm just sharing some of the points that I've taken from the World Bank's report. So if you look at the population of the world, we have around 7.9 billion people. But if you look at the way in which they live, it's very difficult to digest some of these facts. So roughly half of these population live on less than $5.5 per day. 10% of the world survive on less than $1.9 a day. Over 1 billion suffer from malnutrition. There is no access to potable water. 2.4 billion did not have access to proper sanitation. More than 10 million children die of preventable diseases. HIV, AIDS, still a huge pandemic. Poorest 50% of the world's population accounts for just 5% of the global income, which means that there are so many issues around us. And if you look at United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 17 that United Nations came up with, each of the problem of the world can actually be put in any of these 17 buckets. And every country, including the developed nations, are working, all countries are working towards solving these problems. Now, for example, if you look at poverty in India, there is also poverty in the United States, but the magnitude or the level at which it happens could be different because of the context in which we are talking about. So every country has these problems. Some countries are making huge progress in many of these issues, solving these issues, but all the why I'm sharing this here is to tell you that there are huge problems, and these problems provide a lot of opportunities to work in the social impact space. So why social entrepreneurship? These are some of the macro reasons, and what you find below are the reasons at an individual level. If you look at the scenario which I just discussed with you, the World Bank's report and UN's 17 SDGs, what you find is that there is a widening disparities in the distribution of income and wealth in almost all the countries. And government has its own limitations. Whatever interventions it tries to do, there are inherent limitations. Market forces have failed to meet the social demands, which means that we require people who can act as change agents, who can bring about social transformation. And these are those people whom we call as social entrepreneurs. At an individual level, why is somebody becoming a social entrepreneur? As Mr. Puneet rightly said, altruism could be a reason, empathy, self-efficacy, thinking that I have the capability to solve these problems, strong motivation, and being the change they wish to see. So at an individual level, there are so many factors that can motivate somebody to take up this challenging assignment of, solving the social challenges that they see around them. And at the national level, regional level, at global levels, there are so many issues out there which require people who can act like change agents and can bring out sustainable solutions and come up with transformations in the society. So how can you set up a social enterprise? There are different models. And here I'm showcasing to you 3 different models, which today many enterprises are following. So a social enterprise is something that use commercial strategies for financial, social, or environmental well-being to maximize the social impact. Profit also may be required in order to run the social enterprises, because the social enterprise has to be self-sustaining over a period of time. So these are 3 models. You find that there could be an embedded model, integrated model, and an external model of social entrepreneurship. What is an embedded model? In an embedded model, the social program that you are undertaking and your enterprise activity are one and the same, or they are packed together. For example, you take the case of Grameen Bank. Grameen Bank is a banking business. They are into banking. But what they do in banking here is they are doing banking for the poor people, which means that they are directly linking their product or service to the social issue that they are trying to solve. So social problem and the enterprise activity are embedded together in the business model. The second type is an integrated model, where the social programs become one part of your enterprise activity. It is not completely embedded. So take the case of Tom's Shoes. Could be considered as an example of an integrated model, wherein You say that for every pair of shoes that I sell for profit, I am donating a pair of shoes to a child in need. So it is an integrated model. There is also one more model, which is an external model, where you have a for-profit business running purely for profit making, and a portion of their money is spent for social programs. So you find that many companies today have CSR activities. They are into a particular line of business, they make profit, and they see to it that a portion of their profit is used for corporate social responsibility and related activities. Like, for example, Cognizant has got Cognizant doing the IT software business, and they also have a Cognizant Foundation established in order to see to it that a portion of the money out of the profits of the company is spent for society, social development. So that is an external model. So when somebody thinks of starting a social enterprise, any of these models can be looked at, whichever is possible, whichever is applicable in the context. Accordingly, the model can be decided. There are a lot of works done in this space, and what you see here are adapted from these basically in 1998. And what you see below, the second picture, the spectrum of social enterprises. So what you see here is, on the one side, you have the traditional non-profit, the NGOs or charity organizations on the one side. And on the other extreme, you have the traditional for-profit organizations, the pure commercial organizations. And in between, what you see are the different formats of social enterprises. So we have a non-profit with income generating activity, a pure social enterprise, a socially responsible business. For example, somebody like a body shop can be called as a socially responsible business because they say that we are cruelty-free company. We don't test our products on animals or rabbits or guinea pigs. So it's a socially responsible business. And then you have companies that practice social responsibility through their CSR funding. So all these models are possible. You can be falling in any of these categories. There is no standard format of operating a social enterprise. Any of these models can actually work. Now, as long as the objective is to solve a particular social problem, or the social mission is at a priority when compared to the money making. Final discussion. I've come to the end of my session. So this is a question to the audience. Can you think of some local or regional problems that would require social entrepreneurial interventions? Can you name a few in Coimbatore or in Tamil Nadu or in India at large? What do you see some problems which require such kind of interventions? Many people are working in this space actually, but yeah. Waste management.
I actually got a chance to visit a place called Tilpul this holiday, and I found a lot of people are sleeping on the bus stand. That was very painful. So for me, that also is a social problem. People don't have shelter, a place to hide, a place they don't have a place to call home.
True, very good. So homelessness, or you don't have a place to sleep. Pollution really is a big problem that is affecting. Thank you, Jacqueline. Stray dogs, pollution. I think there are so many such issues, right? And if you just might be sit and start listing, you will get hundreds of such problems getting listed. Is it possible to create impact at an individual level? Though we are talking about social entrepreneurs who are doing it at a large scale, all of them have started at a very, very small level. But do you think, is it possible for you to create an impact at an individual level to solve some of these problems? So somebody said there is homelessness is a problem. People don't have homes to sleep. Or then Jacqueline said that. And then pollution is a problem. Waste disposal is a problem. So can we do something about it at an individual level? Yes, it is possible. Preeti says, yeah, yes, we can, right? And I think that is a starting point of your journey of social entrepreneurship, right? You see a problem instead of just complaining about it or feeling bad about it. Can we start acting upon it? Can we start doing something instead of maybe we won't be able to go out there, form a team, and kind of create a huge impact? Might be we can correct ourselves. Very good, we can correct ourselves, or we can start writing about it, talking about it, educating others about it. Might be that is something at an individual level you can start with, and that exactly is the starting point of social entrepreneurship. Every social entrepreneur actually started that way. They started thinking about it, and they started talking about it, and they started acting about it. So United Nations came up with a beautiful guide. It is called the Lazy Person's Guide to Saving the World. And it talks about 4 levels at which you can create an impact. You can be a sofa superstar, which means that you are a lazy guy, but being a sofa superstar, you are able to create an impact at a very, very smaller level. And to an exceptional employee level, there are 4 levels at which you can create impact. So when you get time, do visit UN's write-up regarding a lazy person's guide to save the world. Okay. So with that, I come to an end of my session. I would like to end with a quote: be the change you want to see in the world. Thank you all. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Savita. That was an excellent session. If you have any questions, you may unmute and ask participants, or you can even post it in the chat box. I'll ask one question, Savita. Many of these people, you have shared the success stories. Did they also face challenges when they were, because that was one thing. I believe normal entrepreneurship itself, you have so many challenges, and this kind of taking a social issue and then working towards it, and if it's an innovative idea, I think a lot of challenges they would have faced. Padman, we know because we have seen the story of this in the movie. The others, like the Toms and all, do you think they faced a lot of challenges? And what was the main challenge that they face? If you have some commonality.
Yeah. So thank you. It was a very interesting and important question. Social entrepreneurship is not an easy journey. When compared to commercial entrepreneurship, it's even more difficult. The major reason is that you're going to work in the social impact space. So money is not your priority. And so sustaining your business model is quite challenging. For example, if you take the case of some of these social entrepreneurs case studies that I shared, all of them had these difficulties of sustaining. How can they build a model in such a way that there is an income also getting generated, though you're operating in the social impact space? And as you rightly said, Arunachalam Muruganandam's case, we know that he was considered to be an idiot. He was considered to be a crazy man when he was experimenting the sanitary pads on himself. Similarly, when Bankar Roy started his barefoot college, he was actually denounced by his family because everybody thought that he was fit to serve the world, and he was here in Rajasthan sitting with the illiterate people. So support that you receive at the ground at the initial levels until you establish yourself is quite a big challenge. The risk that you are taking is quite big because sustaining this model, creating a income generation mechanism around this model is quite challenging. And all these cases that I've said, all of them have gone through those phases of challenges and till they became very successful.
And I guess to also convince others about their idea, to sell their idea.
Definitely.
Big challenge.
Definitely. Big challenge. And I think tomorrow, some of the participants here who are students who would like to start something of their own, always look at also the social impact. You could be a commercial entrepreneur, but also look at the possibilities of having a social impact also in your business model embedded. For example, you may be starting a boutique or you may be starting a small hotel. Can you employ somebody with disability there? Can you help somebody who doesn't get employment elsewhere? You give them employment. So there are so many possibilities of social inclusion and impacting other lives possible. We need to just ensure that even if it is a commercial venture, is there a possibility or scope for social inclusion is something as youngsters you need to be thinking about.
If I may ask one more question. Are there any organizations which support exclusively social entrepreneurs, or there are these organizations which support entrepreneurs?
Okay, so if you look at the social impact space, there are quite a few organizations that are providing training, networking opportunities, and funding to social ventures. So, for example, Ashoka is one such university which purely trains the people who want to work in the social entrepreneurship space. They provide them with the fellowship, they provide them with funding, networking support, and ensure that these fellows become, create impact in their own areas. So Ashoka is a well-known, organization that supports, and there are quite a few other organizations also in this space that's provide funding support, networking, training support to social entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Savita. There's a question in the chat box by Preeti.
Yeah. So as you said, social entrepreneurship is way more difficult than other entrepreneurship, but then how to sustain a social entrepreneur for a longer period of time? A very important question. And that's what I was just telling to Dr. Vandana, that you need to have an income generation model also woven or created along with the social impact model. Only then financially you will be able to sustain. See, one problem that usually that happens with the social entrepreneurs is that many of them start out as charities. And so every time they will have to write to people, go to people who can fund them. And that itself is a huge painstaking process. So instead of engaging in donation-based or charity-based financial model, you need to be looking at profit-based financial model also, which means that you saw the example of Tom's Shoes, or you saw the example of Grameen Bank. Grameen Bank is actually serving the poor people, but they charge an interest because that interest helps the bank to run its operations. Tom's Shoes charges the regular people who can afford to pay, and with that money they are donating to the children in need, right? So if you can create a hybrid model or a for-profit model of social impact or social entrepreneurship, that will take care of the long-term sustainability.
I think there are no further questions. Anybody? Yeah. Yes, I think there are no more questions. Okay.
Maybe we'll ask everybody to switch on their cameras, so we'll take a photo.
Those who can, please, can you switch on the camera so that we can take a picture? Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Puneet sir. Yeah, thank you.
The others?
All your students are very shy.
Students may not. Yeah, Abhirami. Yeah, good to see. I'll give you 5 seconds more. If you want to come in the picture, please switch on your cameras. Yeah, Faraja. I think that's it.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Okay, I've clicked the pic. Okay. So thank you, Savita, on behalf of all of us. Thanks a lot. That was a very, I can say, very well structured, presentation. It was in a way, the flow of the presentation was excellent and very inspirational also to hear about those cases and the stories that you have mentioned. Very inspiring, and I'm sure that students would have, got that spark somewhere, and also in some way, like, how can we be the change that we want to see in the world? If we may not all be successful social entrepreneurs, but in some way, how we can make a difference to the society, how we can give back to the society. I think that message also was very clear from your session today. Thank you so much. And I can see that so much efforts has gone into, and the PPTs also had loads of information, very power-packed and intense it was. So thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and on behalf of CMA and all the participants, I thank you wholeheartedly, and thank you Vidya and all the team from CMA for giving an opportunity to me to host this session. And once again, thank you, Savita. Thank you, participants, for your attention.
Thank you, Vandana, and thank you everyone for your patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.